Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to How to Find and Close More Deals for Startups. My name is Colin Mahan, and I'm a Director of Programs at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit that's building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you'll see in the chat in a moment, the Nasdaq Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So check out those links and resources we have for you in the chat. We've got a couple housekeeping items before we get started. Firstly, say hello and let us know where you're dialing in from in the chat. Secondly, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit those questions for us at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll try our best to get to them all. Now, none of San Francisco. All right. Now, none of what we do here at the center could be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft, BPM, and Hubspot for startups. We're grateful and humbled by their contributions and hope you're grateful too. Now, before we get started for our content today, we're going to start off by taking a quick poll just to let us know how you're feeling about your business today. Are you optimistic, in survival mode, feeling a little anxiety? Let us know. All right, we've got San Francisco, Philly, Redondo Beach, Arlington, Texas, Tanzania, Des Moines. All right, Argentina. Welcome, welcome. SF Bay Area. Tampa, Florida, welcome. Redmond, Washington. All right, great mix. Alberta, Canada, welcome. All right, well, I'm gonna end this poll. Looks like optimism is in the huge lead today, which is good news, but there is a little bit of survival mode and anxiety out there. So hopefully our presentation today with Mayra will help alleviate some of those anxieties. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome in the chat to our special guest, Mayra Ceja is a startup scout, VC partnerships at Hubspot, and podcast host at Venture Unplugged. We're going to drop that podcast link in, I'm sure, at some point today. Mayra, welcome.
You will. Hi there. Hi, Colin. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's great to have you back.
I'm really excited to talk to everyone today. I always enjoy chatting with this group, but I think there's also a lot of, anxiety, excitement over the holidays in terms of sales. So hopefully we can learn a few tips and tricks that are very both practical and long-term effective. So that's what I'm hoping to cover today. Shall we get started?
Yep, I love it. I'll just hang until you share screen. Make sure you're in there.
Let me share. All right, we're looking at the right
screen. Over to you. Yep.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Give me 1 second. All right. So want to tell everybody a little bit about myself. Please go ahead and, feel free to drop in any questions into the chat. But my name is Mayra. As Colin mentioned, I have an extensive background in working with startups. I'm incredibly passionate about sales and marketing, but also in general, just helping startups grow. Before joining HubSpot, I worked in venture capital where I invested in over 21 companies, both B2B and B2C. So I have a lot of real practical experience in terms of how do you get not only from 0 to 100 customers, but then 100 to 1,000 customers, and then continue to scale that process. So hope to share some of that knowledge with you all today. And then for fun, I play tennis, I cook, and I just have a podcast. And a small tidbit, I also just got married last week. So that's a little bit about me. But for today's agenda, we have a lot to cover. We're going to be really talking about how do you attract new leads? How do you create a real sales process that's going to be manageable for you as a small startup, and also that will scale with you. And then we're also going to dive into really practical stuff on how do you manage the sales calls and some tools and tips along the way. So let's get started. And before we do, just wanted to remind everyone that as part of our partnership with Nasdaq, we do provide a free CRM, 30% off, and then also include some of these education sessions. So without further ado, let's talk about what has changed. And a lot has changed since a couple of years ago, as buyers now have a lot more access to internet information, and buyers really want to be in control of their buying purchase. No longer are we actually selling, but they want to manage actually when do they make their purchases, how they're learning about your product. And our job, right, as founders, as salespeople, we're actually trying to engage with them in a way that they want to be engaged with. What we used to see is that before, it really relied heavily on salespeople to do a lot of the sales journey. Well, marketing was just a tidbit. Maybe you got a quick flyer and people hopped on the phone immediately. We're actually seeing people want to self-serve a lot more. So this means by learning about your product, your company through a blog, through an email nurturing campaign before they jump on to speaking to somebody live, which is this blue dots and sales calls, right? So what we wanted to be thinking about is how do we integrate the marketing to that sales piece in a seamless way so that your end buyer really has the best experience and is able to purchase when they want to and as quickly as possible. So this is what we're going to be talking about. And remember that it's not really what you sell, it's how you sell it. So we want to be thinking first about the buyer's journey. So at Hubspot, and this is actually what we used from the very beginning. 10 years ago, we were a tiny startup ourselves. Now we have over 20,000 employees and we are publicly traded and we have over $1 billion in revenue. But we still use the same principles, which is thinking about our customer through these 3 different stages, which is where are they at in their buyer's journey? Are they in the awareness? Meaning, hey, they're just discovering that they have a problem that they think they might be ready to purchase, or are they in the consideration stage where they're looking at different options and what can solve their problem, and then ultimately in the decision stage, just ready to make a decision. So as we think about these different stages, you want to ask yourself, where are my customers? For many of you, because you're doing a startup, if it's in a completely new field, completely new product, you're very much starting at the awareness stage, and you want to be providing the right tools that will help you and your buyer really understand your product. So that includes white papers. When you get into the considering stage, there's a little bit more engagement with webinars, case studies, and you can see the list here. At the decision-making stage, that's actually when you do your demos. And this is often what we see many startups offer the demo really immediately without thinking about, is my lead actually ready for that demo? Or do they still need a little bit more information to actually figure out if this is going to be the right product for them? Because remember, demos get really costly in terms of time and also payroll. So as you're thinking about your strategy, we want to be thinking about how do you create strategies for attracting new people, engaging with a new sales lead, and then ultimately delighting customers, because that delight is actually going to help fuel additional customer leads. And so at Hubspot, we provide this flywheel effect that we're known for, right? Which is attract, engage, and delight. And you always want to be thinking about, okay, what are the tools that I can do at each stage of this? So to attract, right, we have this blogging, social media, content, engaging tools. We want to be thinking about, and this is where the sales process, right, really takes hold. What automated tools can we actually use to start engaging with our customers in order to start closing that deal? And then once you do close, then looking at what tools can you use to delight your customers. Now, for some of you, the question that you should ask yourself is, where are you focusing your marketing efforts? Is it really top of funnel? Is it just really in trying to get completely new leads, or actually working those leads all the way through? And then how much marketing efforts are you spending towards your existing customers? Because remember that an existing customer is actually much more valuable and less costly to either upsell or to get a new lead from, meaning like a recommendation from, than completely looking for a new customer. All right. Now, here are going to be a couple of the plays. Any questions so far? By the way, feel free to include them in the chat and I can try and get to them. I'll keep going. All right. So let's see. All right. So the plays. So here are a few of the plays that we've worked through when it comes to attracting and engaging. So when it comes to attracting, you want to look at your SEO, you want to start blogging, and you want to include social media. For engaging, which we'll dive in a little bit deeper, you want to be looking at chat box, anything that can create a more engaging like lead magnet, such as a newsletter, any downloadable items. And then you want to make sure that you have a way to email and automate as much as possible. So let's first understand SEO optimization. So we have a full class dedicated to all the details of this. So we're going to stay at a high level, and I'm happy to offer additional resources for this. But on a high level, we want to be thinking about SEO as on-page and off-page, right? So when we think about on-page, is how relevant is the information, and how is it flowing to my audience? So remember, a person has already landed on your page, but can they quickly find the information that they need to evaluate whether they should hop on a call for a demo or not, or whether they should click that button buy now? Are they equipped enough with FAQs? Do they need a little bit more nurturing? Is there an opportunity for them simply to raise their hand like, hey, I'm kind of interested in your product or service, but I'm not ready to buy, but I'd like to continue to get information from you. So you want to make sure that you have not only that content there, but that it's actually optimized and linked correctly. Then you also want to be thinking about off-page SEO. By off-page SEO, we mean, is this easily searchable? And are there ways for you to provide backlinks? Backlinks tend to be really a great way for you to gain authority and get higher on the search engine. And by backlinks, we mean any website that's reputable that can link back to you. So for example, I would consider Hubspot or Nasdaq reputable sites. So anytime if they write an article or a posting and then there's a backlink to your website, that'll increase your SEO. And so this is when we think about like backlinks, right? So SEO is something that you do to optimize the content, making sure, right, that the keywords are in there, that everything is searchable in a way that your audience is looking for. Remember to think about, if you were your own customer, right? Put yourself in their shoes. What would you be searching for on the internet? And is this answering your question? And then the second piece of it is this backlinks to it. So we want to make sure that, over time, backlinks tend to have, you put a lot of effort in, but they really, and your efforts can decrease over time. Content continues to grow over time. The second piece of advice is really to start blogging as soon as possible. And when we think about blogging, what we want to do is think about this actually as an investment. It's much less costly to generate content materials than to do a paid search advertising. And it's much stickier because this content builds upon each other. So remember our SEO efforts, that's going to continue to actually generate new leads for you. Rather than when you do paid ads, it's a one-time purchase, you get a lead, but then that's it. Content actually allows you to continue to be searchable over the internet. The other thing is that it really does help you close deals. Remember how I mentioned the buyer's journey has been changing a lot more to self-service? Think about yourself, the last big ticket item that you purchased, right? So some of you might have an experience whether purchasing a car, purchasing a mattress. How much online research did you do before deciding which brand and which place you wanted to actually purchase it on, right? So in the mattress example, right, you probably went on like, what's the best mattresses? Still a big ticket item, $1,000 to $2,000, right? And you then looked at the brand, and then you looked at, okay, but then what's the local retailer that'll actually have it, right? Or you purchased online. So think about what information does your potential ideal customer need to have before they can hit that click button or hit that, hey, I need a demo, I want to talk to a salesperson. And 3, as we mentioned, it has really that long-term value, and over time it will drive tremendously more traffic. Now, 3rd is when we think about social media. So we want to be thinking about, okay, so what are your goals with social media? Social media can be quite intimidating for most of us if that's not really, a strength. If you're not a natural, Instagram person or, Twitter person, whatever your choice of platform is. But what you want to see is actually setting up a program for this and really defining what are your goals. Is my goal to educate? Is my goal to close my audience? What is it? Am I just driving traffic to my website, which is perfectly fine, but you just need to be clear. What's the purpose of any social media that you're doing? And then really decide, okay, what platform is best suited for my audience? For some people in the audience, the audience might be better suited for Instagram. For others, it might better be suited for LinkedIn. So the one example that I can think of, right, is recently I was looking for all these wedding venue providers and food providers, right? So that's a natural, better fit for me to discover new potential retailers via Instagram than on my LinkedIn. I'm not getting the same information on my Twitter feed or on my LinkedIn feed as I would on my Instagram feed for venues that I'm looking for, right? So think about, how does your product fit? Where are your particular ideal customers searching for your information? It's going to be on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever that is, and try to focus on that. And then you want to think about, right, how does your content tie back into that? So one great thing is to start with something that's authentic, that works for you. Visuals are always important. And remember to post multiple times a day. One mistake that we see startups do is that they think posting, especially if you're using fast social media like Twitter or Instagram, right, is that they only remain at the top of the feed for a very short amount of time. So you really want to post multiple times a day to make sure that you're really at the top of the feed as much as possible. And then don't forget to analyze performance and figure out not only, right, how's your social media tying back to your actual sales, but which channel is actually performing better, because it might surprise you. And later we're going to go on with a few tools of how to track some of this. Now, what a lot of startups ask us about, somebody asked about LinkedIn posting multiple times per day. For LinkedIn, it's a much slower game, because for LinkedIn, you want to work on, so the second piece is not just the number of posts. You actually want to make sure that people like it and like repost it. So I would actually, for LinkedIn, have something a little bit longer. You can post like once a day or a couple times a week for LinkedIn. But I would have a plan to make sure that my friends either reshare it, or my coworkers, right? If anybody's, within your team, do some simple copy paste, like, hey, can you guys retweet this? Or send them, hey, I just posted this. Can you guys like it? Retweet it. Try to get as many likes and repost as possible for that particular one. And that also goes right for, right, like Twitter, if you want to up how many likes that you get, because it will help. So remember, think about think about a holistic plan around that. And then other than LinkedIn, the top ones tend to be really around Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, as I mentioned. But additionally, you may want to look at if there's other smaller community groups that make sense for you. So, for example, if I am selling to startups, right, there's community groups focused on startups. Figure out if there's some subgroup where it's important for you to post. You don't have to post every day on those, but then think about, hey, can I post once a month in some other smaller community groups? Now, the other question that we were going to go into was ads. So people often ask me, Mayra, like, should I do ads or should I just do content? The thing is, you probably have to do both, but you need to understand that ads are a short burst of information. So you pay money and you get quick feedback. This is a great way to do some testing of initial product interest, or to start getting people back to your website. But you need to think about, right, like the cost. What are you testing? And figure out, am I testing for actual cost conversion? Then they need to be well past in that buyer's journey, right, at the decision-making stage. So, hey, I'm already looking for watches. I know kind of what brand that I want, and you give me a 30% off. Okay, I'll probably click on that one. That's way different ad than at the beginning if you're trying to figure out if, hey, are they interested in this product? Do they find any pain points around this? So just think about, what are you actually testing? What part of the buyer's journey are you focusing on? And what do you really hope to get in return? Is it direct customer conversions over time? Are there many more steps, right? Is it first drive to the website, or is it drive to the website and buy, drive to the website and get on my mailing list, and then over time make a purchase? So think about how you're driving people through that. And B2B is actually very interesting. Let me see if we cover it a little bit more, but B2B ads actually respond very well to content. And you can post this content all throughout your social media. And content, I mean like leadership type of expertise. So anything where you're becoming an industry expert. So if you're in like security, right? So, hey, these are 5 things that you should know about like your security, or hey, here's an industry piece comparing blah, 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 something like that, where it's not so much about a direct sale with B2B. It's really about gaining trust and developing a relationship with your potential customers, right? Because the buying cycle is slightly longer than a direct one-click type of purchase as it would be with a consumer. So think about it that way. Either way, with whether it's B2B or B2C, you want to make sure that you're measuring true ROI and have some tools around this. So we want to be thinking about impressions, clicks, contacts, and overall customers. And you can only do this if all of it's tied together. So at HubSpot, we have these tools together. You can get multiple tools and have this process, but ultimately I highly recommend that you have some sort of viewpoint as to, again, how many people are viewing that ad, how many people are clicking through, what is that actually leading to, which is contacts, and then ultimately are those contacts converting to customers. So think about how you set your systems up so that you're able to get feedback as to the money that you've spent. All right, so let's talk about chatbots and engaging. All right, so you all are familiar with chatbots because you've probably engaged with them. You've all probably at least engaged with Amazon. One of my favorite chat boxes, right? They're very, very good and intuitive as to what they do. But we have found an increasing conversion of leads to chat box, because what happens is actually that when you're ready to buy like something, you have a slight window of consideration, right, between you and the competitor. And so the more responsive you can be, the better. However, we are fully aware, right, that businesses and humans aren't open and awake 24 hours a 7, but you can create some sort of feeling that they are through chatbots. So chatbots, one, can serve as a way to serve your potential customer lead a little bit better, help them get the information that they want, book something later in advance if they want a demo. Or the other thing is that also you can start learning from them. So you can ask them direct questions on the chat box. These take about 15, 20 minutes to set up, but you can ask them, hi, would you like to sign up for our newsletter, continue to receive something? We saw you were interested in this page for some reason. If they're on your pricing page, it's a great way for your chat box to pop up and say, hey, I saw you were on our pricing page. Do you have any questions? Would you like to schedule a demo? So that's what I suggest we would include. And by the way, these slides will all be available afterwards because it's a lot of information. So stay tuned. All right, let's go to 5. All right, lead magnets. So this is like a rule of life, actually. It's not just about marketing and sales. It's really that in life and in all relationships, you should figure out a way to add value first and add greater value than whatever you extract, right? And by that we mean is figuring out what does your customer actually want, providing that first without thinking anything is going to happen, and then before asking for something back. However, so some common ways to do this is through ebooks, right? Checklists, templates. If you guys Google anything, HubSpot on marketing, HubSpot, we just went a little bit on SEO. If you want to go deeper, you can go HubSpot on SEO. You're going to find tons of free stuff that we've provided free of charge, right? Without the direct intent that you will convert, but that help get you into this lead generation like magnet. And I talk about us because you think about sort of how meta this is of how we really optimize our own marketing and sales, right? For our own software. But it's really about creating something that's free, that's providing value, that's really attractive for people, and then extracting a tiny bit extracting a tiny bit of value, right? Not the same. And what I mean by that is that you want to be asking, hey, what's your email? What's your phone number? Whatever you need to contact them back, right? But then also ask, like, which services are you into? Figure out what are ways that can help you qualify this lead. So for example, some of you might be geographically bound. So you should include, hey, where are you located? Some of you might be interested in small companies under 100 customers, right? So, hey, what's your customer size? If it's over 1,000, then that's not a lead for you, and that's okay. But now you know, so then you don't spend too much effort on this. So think about, how do you leverage this form piece of it to extract a little bit of value, right? Don't ask too many questions, like 3 little boxes, 4 maxes max, is like max that people will fill out in exchange for this free downloadable thing. But here you start to get to know your customer, and you start to figure out, okay, what out of all these leads is going to be good potential versus who's just, on my website for whatever reason, but I really shouldn't spend too much effort on following up with them because it's not a clear match for my ideal buyer. So again, when you think about where should this free stuff and lead magnets go, pretty much everywhere, right? So here's an example of how our website looks, or one of our pages looks, right? That's here's, you have the magical chat box popping up, free, all these different, lead magnets. So for us, one of the top ones is a free CRM, all this other good stuff. So 6, email marketing and automation. Okay, so email isn't dead. Email is actually very, very popular. And it has a really high ROI. So you have, right, all these email users. What the problem with email marketing is that you shouldn't spam people, and you shouldn't continually spam people. So what you want to make sure is that you are providing value. Again, put yourself in their shoes. If this email pops up in your inbox, is it actually adding value to your life, right? For whatever reason. And if it is, people will click on it. And if it is, people will continue to click on it. So that's how we need to start thinking about email, right? And when they click on it, and when people give us their email address, we should really value that and see that as like a deep trust that we need to like fulfill. So remember, sending the right message, you want to optimize, and then you want to personalize it at scale. Most people actually stop. So here's a common mistake that most startups do. They'll stop at a very 1 or 2 emails. It actually takes around 7 emails to fully get a real contact with the person. And this we know from our own email marketing that we do, right? So you won't always get the 30-minute marketing assessment in person at the beginning, but you will get it over time, and some people will convert sooner. But most startups will stop very early on at the 2nd email. Figure out different touch points, whether it's a conversion of different types of emails there. You can do a lot of these very automated. So here's what some of our tooling has, but you can get other systems to do it. So your lead nurturing. So if they did something, yes, right, you send them to a certain mailing list. If they said no, you put them on another one. And then based on that, you can do this other tree chart. So now let's get started with some sales stuff. Any questions before we jump into some sales? All right. I think we're looking pretty good on time too. All right. So let's do sales. Okay, so now we've figured out a lot of how do you actually attract new leads? How do you start getting them into this pipeline by figuring out both ads, some content, and having some systems in place to really capture those leads. But here's the sales process, right? It combines inbound with outbound. And by inbound, I mean people that are naturally attracted, right? Coming to your website saying, hey, I want to purchase, versus outbound, right? Which includes some prospecting. Both will include connecting and qualifying a lead, and then this research discovery phase. Now, prospecting, when we think about the best ways to prospect, I want you all to think about who is your ideal customer. And I don't know if you've done this this research, but if not, you can quickly Google kind of how to set up your customer persona. But really, you want to be thinking about who are you trying to attract? Where are they located? What job titles do they have? Because when you create these outbound lists of people you want to target, right? It's not just looking at LinkedIn. Hey, I want to target these types of companies to become clients. It's also finding then within those companies, which people are you going to target? And that tends to be done by like title, right? Are there certain geographic locations you're going to start with to narrow down your search? You just want to have a couple parameters so you start to create the right list that's going to be most effective for you. And once you start creating a list, then you can start seeing how well is that list doing. Should you expand your list, either geographically or by title or whatever dimensions you're narrowing it down by? Or should you narrow it down, right? If it's too wide and not getting that, or are certain segments just not responding or working for you? All right. So the other piece of it is then connecting and qualifying. So there's a couple of ways to connect and qualify. One of them, as I mentioned, was remember how they needed to fill out that form, is to use forms as quick ways to really qualify clients. If you only do small SMBs and you're only trying to sell to solid SMBs, and this is right a Google contacting you or a large 10,000 person company, that's probably not a good fit, and that's okay. But now you've qualified them as a yes or a no, right? So qualifying is almost just as important as prospecting, because it actually allows you and your teams to focus better on who you're trying to sell. And so again, a no is actually in sales sometimes a good thing, because again, it just means, okay, no more time with them. Let's keep going with the people that are potentially going to close. Research and discovery. So once you find good leads, you qualify them. Hey, this makes total sense. Like they are right in line. They're the right size. They're having the right problems. Let's do additional research and discovery and understanding, right? Further, like what other key people do you need to talk within the organization? When it comes to presenting, you want to make sure that you have qualified them before presenting. Most startups start with the demo, so they move this presenting piece to step one. No. The way you actually do it is you break up the call into two. And normally what you say, great, let's have a 15-minute explore call to take care of 1, 2, and 3, right? To qualify them and learn any questions, do any research. And then you break up the second call. Great, now that we've identified this, now we can actually schedule a demo, because now I have a better understanding of what your challenges are, and I can better speak to our software for that. This works. This is how most larger companies will sell software. They don't do it cold because software is very complex. So even when you think about if you ever do demo calls with like HubSpot, they will ask you first for like, okay, what part of it do you want to focus on? Because it's such a robust thing. And similarly with anything that you're trying to sell, you want to really figure out what are going to be the challenges, so you have that focused conversation of problem solving for them. And then the fifth piece, so people think, great, I presented. You actually want to think about preempting any handling objections, right? So preempting any objections that they might have. And by this, we mean you will hear most potential customers come up with 2 or 3 roadblocks as to why they don't want to purchase, right? And that'll be slightly different for every company, but you want to pay close attention to what are they objecting to. And so they'll be objecting to cost, they'll be objecting to timeline, they'll be objecting to something personal. And then you want to be thinking about how do you actually address those things. And we're going to go over some concrete ways to do that. And then 6, closing. Whenever you end a sales call or any type of call, you want to end with next steps. So that means, hey, great. When do you think we can get this contract signed? When, what can they commit to? And you want to do that on the phone with them. So that's our sales process. And so when we think about the goals of the sales process, it's to really create deal stages that are factual and then that also match the way buyers purchase. Remember, you're really educating and not selling. Otherwise, a pushy salesperson is just not working in this day and time. Remember, add value first. And so when we think again about the buyer's journey, think about what are the activities you're actually doing, right? So when you're prospecting, qualifying, researching, presenting, these are the potential things that you as a seller are doing. And then what is the buyer, right? Where are they researching this stuff? How are they thinking about this? Doing a small map like this can really help you understand your own buyer's journey and then the activities that your own business can focus on. And remember how we originally talked about delighting your customer? This is where we see the sales process as cyclical. Not only do you prospect, right, go through the whole sales process, but also think about with your existing customer base, are there ways for you to engage with them, re-engage with them, and expand either the existing sale with them, or is there a way they can add referrals to you? All right, so this is a lot of information. What do you do with this? So when we think about the buyer's journey and thinking about how do you attract, convert, and close, again, think about your digital presence. Think about what is your website doing? Can it be found? How can you outreach a new set of people, right, by creating those lists in that sales process? And then how do you convert? That can be done through your website, meaningful CTAs, or then thinking through your actual sales pitch and demo. And then ultimately closing, right? So think about how many clicks does it take for them to purchase? And then think about that actual sales call, how that structure should line up. Remember that when speaking to customers, you're always thinking about being consultative and collaborative. We find this is 10 times more effective. And we're going to jump into a sales call. How many people have experience with sales and any issues that people are having with sales? You can write them into the chat. All right, needed a little water break. Here we go. So sales calls. So here is actually some of the best training that we do and we use ourselves for our sales teams, right? So during a sales call, you want to set up the goals, the plans, and the challenges and timelines. This is a great framework to train yourself, to train salespeople. During that call, you need to answer all these questions or try to answer as many as you can, right? So you want to ask your potential customer, right? They're your lead. What are your goals? How quickly do you want to move possible? Who else is responsible? Because what you want to do before that demo, remember, we're delaying this demo, is think through who else should be in that meeting. Most people schedule that demo first and don't invite everyone. So you end up doing like 5 demos. That's not an effective use of your time. So you want to instead ask at that initial discovery call or through writing, right? Like, is there anybody else that should be included in this demo before we schedule it, et cetera? You also want to get a better understanding of their plans. How quickly do they want to move on this? Is this something, so when you're looking and thinking about B2B, right, what's motivating them to actually make a purchase? Is it a cost reduction or is it revenue growth, right? As this is going to help you in the way that you frame and close that sale. And then 3, and think about any major challenges or hurdles that are coming towards their goals. How can you actually address some of those pain points? And ultimately, you want to get a general understanding of their time commitment. Are they looking to make a purchase in 6 months, today, tomorrow? What's their sense of urgency? Because then this is going to help you prioritize that sale and ensure that you close. So the way that you do this is actually by training yourself in asking the right questions. Tell me more about that. Why do you think that is? Interesting. Can you elaborate? Notice these are very general and open-ended questions. The goal is to get people to talk at a deeper level of what their pain points are. This is the way you're going to discover that pain. And you can try this with like, even socially. People love to talk, right? But most people, you'll ask them one question and then you move on to the next conversation. But you can get great practice in with like people, whether you're networking or whatever it is. Why is that a big problem? What's your plan to address this? This starts to reveal a lot more and really gets to the root of their pain. All right, so objection handling. So as we mentioned, the one thing that startups mostly or miss is thinking about, okay, I always get these objections. Why not create a process to actually handle them? And what you want to do is to figure out what are the key objections that you normally get, and then create a little talking track for yourself, right? You can always move it a little, but if you have a plan on how to answer it, it's not going to catch you off guard and you're going to be more effective. One way to handle resistance is to always ask, does this resonate with you? And if people say no, that's okay. You'd rather them say no than hang up the phone and you not know that this is not resonating with them, because that gives you an opportunity to actually address them. What is the issue, right? So one way to do that is to challenge the resistance by saying like, oh, okay, this doesn't resonate with you, then, or you must be very happy with your website. And you're getting tons of leads, right? So to challenge right there pre-assumptions and you're perfectly happy, that's going to get them, well, actually, we're not getting as many leads as we think we should be getting, etc. Right? The other thing is to put an alternative position, right? So does this resonate with you? No, it doesn't. But the alternate positioning is like, we also work with companies for whom it doesn't resonate. These companies, blah, 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 do X, Y, and Z, very similar to you. But this is also, but they find like a common challenge, right? That then ultimately you can solve. So for us here, it's like they have leads that they never followed up on. Do you rely on trade shows and referrals to generate business? How do you feel about that return on investment you've been getting, right? This gets them again to open up, and it really expands how they view your actual product, and you start building trust because it's not just like a quick shutdown and moving on to the next sale. In order to give before you get, so acknowledge, great, so there's not much to talk about here. And what you want to do, as the call is closing, just go ahead and give them something that's easy for you to give. By the way, before I let you go, can I give you a quick thing, whether it's feedback on your website, whether it's a quick newsletter that you've already created and how to fix it quickly. Most people will take the free sort of giveaway, right? So sure, take a look at my website, review it, give me some quick tips. But what that does is, again, build trust in a very different way. And it's something easy that you can give, and it may reopen that door to something that was immediately kind of closing. So think about, how do you want to do your explore calls? Remember, I told you all to separate them between the explore call and the demo call. And so what you want to do is set the tone and the pace. So, hey, schedule an exploratory call. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your goals. So make that clear, right? And how it's a better fit between our companies, or how our software might be able to solve your problems, something like that. But be very clear. Hey, I want to learn about your pain points first before I go into problem solving, or even before I give you a demo, because our software doesn't make sense as a demo if I don't understand what's going to be most useful for you. And then how do you improve your current sales process? You want to be looking at what is the current sales process that you're doing. Most startups don't have a sales process or have thought about it. This is not that hard to do. All you have to do is take 5-10 minutes to map out your customer's journey, right? Think about what steps are you doing, write that down. It's very effective and efficient. And then define, right? What are the stages that that the sales needs to go to, and then start measuring results. Super easy. again, 99.9% of startups won't do this. If you're that 1% that does, you become ahead of the game. And this is actually what the startups at scale start to do, and start to do it on like, a weekly, monthly basis, right? You can push it out the more you have already created a process, but start looking at what parts are working, what parts are not. Remember, you can always start using, you can always, and should absolutely start using tools as soon as possible. I encourage everybody to move away from Google Sheets, get some CRM system. Ours is free, but you're welcome to use anything that you can. What you want to do is have some sort of tracker of like all these conversations. Think about how many people that you know that you haven't followed up with, both from the investor perspective, from customer perspective. You need to have some way to capture them, and they can't be in a Google Sheet, and they can't be all in your head. You can't have them in the Google Sheet because it's not scalable. And once you get like a second person, it's just not going to work. This makes it much more searchable. But the cool thing about this is like, right, it can record a variety of things from your activities, your notes, your emails, calls, to then also set task reminders. So, hey, remind me to follow up with this person in 3 months, 6 months, whatever that is. It also tracks any of your meetings. It adds additional contacts. And then this is an all-in-one sort of view of then how it includes deals. Remember to have a structured pipeline, whatever tool you use. Make sure that you have clear stages. So create a discovery, define, demonstration of value, achieve business buy-in, negotiation, contract sent, right? Whatever it is, this is going to allow you to not only figure out where all these deals are and monitor them. This gives you a sense of when they're going to close. You can also look at what's stale in here, meaning like, hey, 5 days since you've talked to them, 100 days since you've talked to them, and they start to like look different colors, so you can actually follow up with them. And then you can also now start tracking with your potential pipeline. This can help you not only manage your cash flow, but then also as you're looking to fundraise to really start projecting some of that. And you can manage your sales pipeline by also doing projection on each piece of it. When we think in decision making, you want to also have a tracker for like, what are your salespeople bringing, what's going on, and then additionally, are there any bottlenecks within your pipeline, right, which you have defined, and start deal forecasting. Remember, think about how do your salespeople like to purchase, right? Whether it's online, self-service, or they need an in-person call. So the key takeaways is figure out, how do you build systems at scale? We've given you a few concrete tips on how you can run your own sales process. Everything will be slightly different, but the core is the same. This works for all types of businesses. Remember that you're always looking to build trust and measure conversions. Trust is key, and you do that by always creating value for your customer. And the way that you do that is by really understanding, what are they looking for? What stage are they at, so that you can match your sales and marketing motions to that buyer's journey. Remember to get the right tools, and then to absolutely use a CRM. So think about if you're already using one, but making sure that that's how you're going to stay on track with most people. So I think that brings us to close to the end. I'm happy to take some questions. I don't know, Colin, if you want to come back on.
We are right here, Mayra. Thank you so much. And I love the ending slide on that one.
Yeah. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah. And just so everyone in attendance knows, we, as a part of our partnership with HubSpot, have a 30% discount for the entire HubSpot tool. But there is the free CRM that is included with that. So I'm going to include that link right here. We do have some great questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to get to those in just a moment. And if you haven't dropped them in, do so now. I'm going to launch a quick poll just to get a quick temperature gauge on what topics you'd like us at the center to be hosting and posting over the next couple of months. So let us know. Looks like no surprises there. Sales is in the lead. Thank you all for voting. But Mayra, just to kick us off, we have a question here, and I'm just going to share that so you can see sales is definitely in the lead, followed by marketing, finance, but a big mix. And we got a ton of those coming up in the next couple of months. How do you keep a potential customer interested after the initial call, especially if it's a long lead time with a B2B sales SaaS startup?
That is a great question. So there's two ways. So one, I would put them on an elongated drip campaign or some sort of like newsletter flow, right? So you ultimately want to ping them like once a month with like, hey, here's a general update. You already have permission to email them, so you can easily enroll them into, hey, here's an update from like our business. Here's like, I like the newsletters because then you can include a couple of things. You can include, hey, here's an example of a customer that's happy. Here's an example of like a new product feature that might make you happy. By the way, feel free to schedule something if you so want. If not, see you next month, whatever, right? Super easy, gets in their inbox or not. That's one way. The other way is to set up task reminders. So remember in our CRM, it had that task feature. Whatever method you do, you need to figure out some way to remind yourself in 3 months to follow up with them or in 6 months to follow up with them. Because the biggest thing that I see is actually not a lack of like identifying leads or finding them, is that people have leaky buckets, right? So you have a bucket and then like everything falls out and then you end up with very little because people don't do the follow-up that's necessary and categorize people. And you can only do that at scale, like beyond 20 people, you cannot remember who to keep track of. So that's why you want to figure out how do you actually do that at scale.
Yep. And then you mentioned the 7 emails. Like people have busy periods of their life and of work. So staying engaged and top of mind, I think, is important. And it's never just your email that failed. It could be just the timing.
Absolutely. And you even have that right with friends. So think about it. Like there's a million reasons why I may not respond even to like a friend email or a text, right? It's like whatever, something happens. So don't take it personally and just like keep going. And again, what I do though think is that if you are seeing people not click your emails, just be nice to them and like drop them from your list. If you are seeing those some engagement, like continue to email them, right? So periodically, I would suggest to take a look at your mailing list and then clean it up by deleting people that haven't opened it in like 6 months, like let them go.
Awesome. Yeah, we did have a sales pro a couple of years ago who said something that continues every time I'm in the shower. I remember it, but he's like, if your messaging isn't working, remind yourself what's on the back of shampoo and conditioner bottles, which is rinse and repeat.
That's a good one. I might have to steal that one.
It's an awesome one.
Again, like in sales, right? There's always another lead to be had, and that's okay.
Awesome. Let's see. Do you have any tips for closing sales, or at least how to for enterprises, like how to get that close? Like you're so close to the deal.
Yeah. So a couple of things where deals fall apart. Okay, so you want to think about like one piece is your leaky lead gen bucket, right? So now you're getting them and now you're having these meetings and you've had a demo, you've put in a lot of effort, but people are dragging their feet, right? So that's very common. So there's a couple of issues that might be happening. One, you have to ask yourself, were all the right people in the room, or is there somebody else that you missed that's helping you drag these feet situation? Two, is there a different assessment of like urgency? Did something change, right? And you want to bring that up directly. And you can do it in a very respectful way, right? Like being like, hey, I just thought I'd check in with you. I just want to make sure we're both on the same page. When we last spoke, you mentioned that you had a high sense of urgency for this. If you need more time, it's okay, but can you let me know? And if it's still something urgent, I just want to make sure, I respect your time. Some phrasing like that. You can use your own spin to things, but you can call people out, right? Like you kind of told me you were ready, right? If you're not, that's fine. But then I need to reprioritize things. Don't be so explicit. Use a nice way to do that. Mm-hmm. But there are ways where you can be very open about the sense of urgency, and it's actually helpful for both parties. One, they don't feel pressured to buy now if something changed, right? So let's say cars are a great sales example, right? But let's say you were selling cars and a person, right, was like, hey, yeah, I'm ready to buy, blah, blah, blah. But suddenly a new expense came up. Well, okay. But then that just means they're in your like 6-month nurturing bucket versus you hounding them every other day, right? Hey, this car, right? Etc. That's it. You're just like, yeah, building trust, having a good relationship with them and understanding what is their timing purchase and checking back in with them and asking, also being explicit. What is there something I have said, haven't answered that you have questions on, like what is what can be holding up the deal, right? That's your main job, is to figure that out.
Yeah. And to build off that a little bit, we got another question from Nate here that says, do you recommend different strategies for software versus physical product?
Different strategies for software versus the same principles apply. With software, you might have more servicing into it. I'm trying to think of like any other clear distinctions. In terms of the sales process, if you're thinking of most physical things, they're probably a faster sale. So if they're like a quick click buy type of thing, right? That tends to be a much faster B2C sale, where one key decision maker can probably make that decision unless it's like a car purchase, right? So those can move a lot faster. With software, you probably have multiple stakeholders, so you need to think through, does the security guy, if it's integrated, then the security person needs to be in there, legal needs to get involved. If it's not integrated and they just need to make a purchase, then who else are the key decision makers that you need to include in those conversations?
Yeah, I think price point also will have a little bit, like I can buy a sandwich real easy, but
yeah.
But if it's something that costs a lot of money.
Exactly, like, absolutely.
All right, another question here. We're almost at time, but I don't want to lose any of the wisdom that you've got from all your experience. So we've been hearing a lot about, how to find potential customers online. Is there like somewhere where you found to be the best way to find new leads? Is it LinkedIn? Is it?
So it depends. So I think this is a combination of how you make your list, right? So your list is going to come from a couple of places. One is like you're just like data searching from the internet. Like, where else can you find a list of potential customers that look alike, like each other, right? That fit your criteria. LinkedIn is a good source because of how accessible people are. Everybody still checks their own LinkedIn, which is interesting, and you still get those emails. You have to be respectful, so you absolutely can't spam people. You can't email them. You can only email them once, so that's it. So it's different than email. So you can use LinkedIn to identify people, but then create your own mailing list via email by like looking up like Hunter.io. There's like various other email lookup places. Then you create an email list and then you put them on some email targeting campaign, right? That's a different way to do it. The other way is, as you're going into your communities, events, etc., figure out how can you easily create a list. So at events, I always interact with people. You can either take down their email and start adding them again to a list, or figure out, can you partner with people, right? So can other people promote you on their like audience because it's a relevant audience, right? And this doesn't have to be a monetary partnership, doesn't have to be even a legal partnership. It just has to be like, hey, do you mind, like, I'll share this to your audience. Do you mind like co-promoting, like a very simple task? And you can also do this with the network of like your own peers of startups, of how they can help you kind of, again, like that post, whatever that is, to help you create additional lead generations. And one thing I wanted to include was actually, we had an update to our discount code. So I included that.
Oh, boom. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It was, somebody said it didn't work. So I'm glad you got to share that.
Perfect.
Also,
okay. Great. We'll include that in the email as well, but I'll go ahead and send that.
We'll include it in the follow-up email, but for everybody on, and especially to you, Mayra, thank you so much for joining us today. We would appreciate your feedback. We've got a bunch of other webinars coming up in the next couple of months, but Mayra, thank you so much. And to everyone over at HubSpot for providing that awesome discount for our community. And thanks again for just joining us to share your wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, for those of you still on, we'd love to hear your feedback from this event. And also, we've got a bunch of great programs. We will follow up with more info on the discounts, Mayra's information, and our upcoming programs, as well as a form asking feedback on what you want to learn over the next couple months. But on behalf of everyone in attendance, thanks again for joining. We'll see you online, hopefully soon. Thanks again.